First contact fallout. The crystalline observation deck of the Harmonious Seeker offered an unobstructed view of the vast emptiness of space as the vessel drifted through the outer reaches of the Altaris system. Captain Nexer stood with his four upper limbs clasped behind his back, his iridescent skin reflecting the soft ambient light of the command center. The Harmonious Seeker represented the pinnacle of collective exploration technology, tasked with charting this unclaimed region for potential expansion. "Captain, we have an anomalous reading entering the system," announced First Observer Talia, her voice creating ripples in the communication fluid that filled the chamber. "Configuration matches no known species in our database." Nexer moved gracefully across the deck, his lower limbs barely making contact with the floor. The main display activated, showing a sleek metallic vessel approaching at considerable speed. Unlike the organic curves and crystalline elements typical of collective designs, this ship was angular, utilitarian, with what appeared to be weapon emplacements along its hull. "Magnify and analyze," Nexer ordered. The screen zoomed in on the vessel, revealing more details: external thrusters, communication arrays, and what appeared to be armored plating. Most concerning were the cylindrical ports along its flanks, almost certainly weapon systems. "The vessel is changing course," Talia reported, her sensory appendages twitching nervously. "It's heading directly toward us." Nexer felt his membranes flutter in response to rising stress hormones. "Initiate first contact protocols. Open communications on all frequencies and initiate the universal translation matrix." For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then the screen shimmered, revealing a face unlike any in collective records. The being had only two eyes, no sensory membranes, and strange filaments growing from the top of its head. Similar creatures could be seen at control stations behind it. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth vessel Intrepid," the alien said. "We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic communication." The translation matrix struggled with the unfamiliar language, but something was wrong. The phrase their system translated as "come in peace" shared root structures with the collective term for establishing dominance, while diplomatic communication translated roughly to terms of submission. "They're demanding our surrender," whispered Telia in horror. Nexer studied the alien ship more carefully. Those were definitely weapon ports, and now that he focused his senses, energy readings showed power building in their systems. "Sensors detect weapons charging," confirmed the defense coordinator. The alien captain continued speaking, her expression unreadable to collective sensibilities. "We hope to share knowledge and resources for mutual benefit." In collective language, the phrase contained subtle threats of resource extraction and forced integration. Nexer made a swift decision. "Activate defensive barriers. Charge disruptors." On screen, the human captain's expression changed. "Is there a problem?" "We detect your defensive systems coming online." "They know we've recognized their true intentions," Nexer said grimly. "Fire a warning pulse across their trajectory path." The Harmonious Seeker's energy emitters released a bright pulse that passed near the human ship without contact. Captain Vasquez's face showed what might have been alarm. "What are you doing?" "We've made no aggressive moves." But the collective's translation system rendered it as, "Your resistance is futile. Prepare to be boarded." "They're powering up their primary weapons," reported the defense coordinator. "Targeting our propulsion systems. We cannot allow them to strike first," Nexer decided. "Target their propulsion and weapons systems. Disable only." The Harmonious Seeker fired precisely calibrated energy beams, striking the human vessel with surgical accuracy. The Intrepid rocked under the impact, sections of its hull glowing from the energy discharge. On screen, Captain Vasquez shouted orders to her crew as smoke filled her command center. The translation came through as garbled threats. The human ship returned fire, its projectile weapons striking the Harmonious Seeker's barriers with unexpected force. "Their weapons technology is more advanced than anticipated," Nexer noted with surprise. Suddenly, the Intrepid disappeared in a flash of light. "They've activated some form of translocation technology," Talia reported. some kind of faster-than-light system we haven't encountered before. Nexer stared at the empty space where the human ship had been. Did they transmit anything before departing? The communications specialist nodded. A burst transmission toward their origin vector. They're calling for reinforcements, Nexer realized with growing dread. He turned to his first officer. Set course for collective space immediately. We must inform the Council. There's a new species in the galaxy, technologically advanced and openly hostile. The collective must prepare for war. The Grand Chamber of the Collective Council hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 23 member species gathered in emergency session. The amphitheater's living walls pulsed with bioluminescence, reflecting the agitation of those present. High Counselor Mira, an elder whose translucent body housed a complex network of neural pathways visible beneath her skin, raised her elongated arms for silence. Gradually, the chamber quieted. "We face an unprecedented situation," Mira announced, her voice resonating through the specialized acoustic chambers. "Captain Nexer's report is deeply troubling. An unknown species has attacked one of our vessels without provocation." Admiral Corva, a battle-hardened veteran with armored exoskeleton plates polished to a midnight sheen, rose from his seat. "The evidence is conclusive. This human warship approached our exploration vessel, rejected peaceful communication, and opened fire. Their technology is concerning, particularly their faster-than-light capability, which could allow them to strike anywhere in collective space." The main display showed images captured from the Harmonious Seeker, the human vessel, the face of their commander, and readings of their weapon systems. "The translation may have been imperfect," offered Counselor Jal, her multiple sensory stalks waving gently. "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding." Admiral Corva clicked his mandibles dismissively. "The humans' actions speak clearly enough. After the attack, they transmitted a signal toward their home system, undoubtedly calling for reinforcements." Scientist Lyra, a smaller being with bioluminescent patterns rippling across her skin, raised a slender appendage. "Our analysis of their technology suggests these humans are at least a century behind most collective races in development. Their weapons are conventional energy-based systems. However, their implementation of faster-than-light travel appears unique." "Primitive does not mean harmless," Corva countered. "The report indicates they absorbed more damage than expected and returned fire with surprising effectiveness." Mira nodded slowly. "What do we know of their origin system?" Lyra manipulated a control panel, and the display changed to show a yellow star with 8 planets. "We believe they originate from the 3rd planet in this system. Long-range scans detect significant artificial structures and energy signatures consistent with an industrialized civilization. There appear to be smaller colonies on the 4th planet and several moons." "I propose immediate action," Admiral Corva said, rising to his full height. "We must send a containment fleet to their system before they can mount an organized offensive. Based on their technology level, a demonstration of collective might should be sufficient to force their surrender." High Counselor Mira's skin rippled with concern. "Containment, not extermination, Admiral." "Of course," Corva agreed quickly. "We are not barbarians." Junior Scientist Vela, who had been studying the data intently, spoke up. "There's something about the human vessel that troubles me. Its design suggests defensive capabilities rather than an invasion force. What if Captain Nexer misinterpreted their intentions?" Admiral Corva made a dismissive gesture. "Are you questioning the report of a decorated captain?" "I question not his honesty, but the circumstances," Vela replied calmly. "Translation errors have caused conflicts before." The council chamber erupted in debate. After several minutes, Mira called for order and a vote. "The council has decided," Mira announced finally. "Admiral Corva will lead a containment fleet to the human system. Their objective is to secure collective borders and prevent any human expansion. The humans will be offered terms of surrender. If accepted, they will be granted protectorate status under collective supervision." Corva nodded with satisfaction. "The fleet will depart immediately. I will take the Dreadnought Arbiter as my flagship. As the chamber emptied, Scientist Vela lingered, studying the frozen image of the human captain on the display. Something didn't add up, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the Council was making a terrible mistake. The damaged Earth warship Intrepid limped into orbit around Mars, its hull still glowing from the alien attack. Emergency repairs had barely kept the ship functional during its desperate journey home. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the control room of Phobos Command, facing a wall of grim-faced military leaders. The largest screen showed Admiral Chen, her weathered face tight with concern as she coordinated from Earth Defense Command. "Play it again," Chen ordered. The recording of the alien encounter flickered on the screens. The multi-limbed captain, the failed communications, the sudden attack. The officers watched in silence, searching for any detail they might have missed. "Our translation systems failed completely," Vasquez explained. "We tried every first contact protocol in the book. They fired without warning." Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "And you're certain your actions couldn't have been interpreted as threatening?" "Positive, Admiral. We approached with weapons powered down and shields at minimal levels, standard peaceful approach protocol." Chen turned to a slender man with cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples. "Dr. Nakamura, what have your teams learned from the sensor data?" Nakamura brought up technical readouts on the main screen. "Their technology is fascinating. Energy-based weapons, far more efficient than ours. Defensive barriers that operate on principles we've only theorized. But most importantly, we've identified patterns in their communication signals that could help us build a better translation matrix." "How long?" Chen asked. "Days, maybe weeks for something reliable. But we're making progress." Chen's expression darkened. "We may not have weeks. All deep space monitoring stations are tracking a large group of ships moving toward our system. Based on their speed, they'll reach Neptune's orbit in 5 days." The room fell silent. "How many ships?" someone finally asked. "At least 30, including one massive vessel that dwarfs anything in our fleet." Vasquez felt her heart sink. "Admiral, the Intrepid is our most advanced warship, and you saw what one of their scout ships did to us. If they're sending 30 ships," Chen's voice was steel, "then we'll face 30 ships. Earth has faced extinction-level threats before and survived. This won't be the first alien race to underestimate humans." She tapped a control, and the screen showed Earth's orbital defenses. "I've already ordered all available ships to return to the solar system. The Luna and Mars defense platforms are being upgraded with what we've learned from the Intrepid data." A tactical officer raised his hand. "Admiral, combined we have only 18 combat-ready vessels, and most are lighter classes. We're outgunned and outnumbered, which is why we won't fight conventionally," Chen replied. "Dr. Nakamura, I want every scrap of technology from the Intrepid data reverse-engineered immediately. Focus on their defensive barriers and weapons." Nakamura nodded. "We've already started, and there's something else you should see." He brought up new readings. "Their sensor technology has specific blind spots. They use a different part of the spectrum than we do. If we reconfigure our ships properly, we could effectively hide in plain sight." Chen smiled thinly. "Excellent." She turned to the tactical display, showing the entire solar system. "We'll position our main fleet here, behind Saturn. The radiation and rings will help mask our presence. Meanwhile, we'll deploy automated defense platforms throughout the system, making it appear our forces are scattered and disorganized." Vasquez studied the plan. "A trap." "Exactly. Let them think we're weak and panicking. When they commit to their attack run, we hit them from behind with everything we've got." The officers began discussing specific details, the room filling with determined voices. Vasquez noticed a change in the atmosphere, the initial fear giving way to focused resolve. Chen's voice cut through the chatter. "Make no mistake, we are technologically outmatched, but throughout human history, that has rarely been the deciding factor in warfare. Innovation, adaptability, and sheer determination have always been our greatest weapons. She looked each officer in the eye. "We have 5 days to prepare a welcome these aliens will never forget." The unexpected defense. The collective fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system, their massive ships casting long shadows across the void. From the command deck of the dreadnought Arbiter, Admiral Corvus surveyed the tactical display showing the yellow star and its orbiting worlds. "Deploy the fleet in standard containment formation," Corva ordered. "Establish blockades at all transit points between the inner and outer planets." Captain Nexar, now serving as the Admiral's first officer, studied the sensor readings with growing concern. "Admiral, the human presence is more extensive than our intelligence suggested. They have installations on multiple planets and moons." "Primitive installations," Corva corrected, mandibles clicking. "Nothing that could stand against even our smallest vessel." The fleet moved with practiced precision, ships taking positions near strategic locations. Sensor officers reported unusual activity throughout the system. Small vessels moving in seemingly random patterns, communications bursts between planets, and energy signatures flickering on and off. "Their movements make no tactical sense," observed one of Corva's strategists. "They're spreading their forces thin instead of concentrating for defense." Nexar frowned. "Or they're following a strategy we don't understand." The human ship I encountered was unpredictable. Admiral Corva dismissed the concern. "They're panicking, as any primitive species would when facing superior technology. Prepare the communication array. It's time to deliver our terms." The communications officer worked at her station, configuring the translation matrix based on the data from the first encounter. "Ready, Admiral." "Broadcast on all frequencies," Corva commanded. His voice took on a formal tone. "To the governing authorities of the human species, your unprovoked attack on a collective vessel constitutes an act of war. However, the collective is merciful. Surrender all military vessels immediately and accept protectorate status, and your civilians will be spared. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply." The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Minutes stretched into an hour. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the third planet," the communications officer finally reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing the human face, an older female with short gray hair and resolute eyes. "This is Admiral Chen of Earth's United Defense Force," the human said, the translation choppy but understandable. "Your accusations are false. Our vessel attempted peaceful contact and was fired upon without provocation." Corva leaned forward. "Your deception is pointless, human. Our sensors detect your primitive weapons powering up throughout your system. Submit now or face the consequences." The human admiral's expression remained calm. "We will defend ourselves if attacked. However, we propose a neutral meeting to resolve this misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Corva replied coldly. "Your time is running out." The transmission ended abruptly. "They're stalling," Corva concluded. "Tactical, analyze their defenses." The tactical officer worked through the data. "Strange readings, Admiral. They appear to be converting civilian vessels for military use, primitive retrofitting, and their defense platforms are positioned inefficiently." From a separate console, Scientist Vela spoke up. She had been assigned to the Arbiter to study human technology. "Admiral, I've analyzed their communication. The translation matrix is showing significant conflicts in linguistic structures. There's a high probability of fundamental translation errors." Captain Nexar looked up sharply. That would explain the confusion during first contact. Corva's expression hardened. The humans fired on a collective vessel. That required no translation. "With respect, Admiral," Vela persisted, "their weapons technology is designed differently than ours. What our sensors read as weapons charging might have been something else entirely." "Enough," Corva said sharply. "Your job is to analyze their technology, not defend them. They've refused our terms. Prepare the fleet for combat operations." As officers rushed to comply, a junior sensor operator called out, "Admiral, detecting a small vessel leaving the orbit of their fourth planet. Configuration suggests it's not military. Ignore it, Corva ordered. Focus on their primary defenses. Unnoticed, the small ship slipped away from Mars, following a trajectory that would take it far from the coming battle, carrying Scientist Vela's one hope for peace. The small science vessel Curiosity drifted silently through the floating ice and rock of Europa's orbit. Its instruments were dark, power systems minimal, appearing to all distant sensors as nothing more than another piece of debris. Inside, Dr. Sarah Takahashi worked frantically at a makeshift communication system. "This is insane," muttered Lieutenant Park nervously, watching the ship's passive sensors. "If Admiral Chen discovers we've broken away from the Defense Force, then she'll have to wait until after this crisis to court-martial us," Sarah replied, not looking up from her work. "I studied every historical first contact scenario in our database. None of this makes sense." The communications array hummed to life, broadcasting a carefully crafted message toward a small alien vessel they had detected operating independently from the main fleet. No response. Sarah adjusted the frequency. "They're listening. They just don't trust us yet." Meanwhile, across the solar system, Admiral Corva stood on the command deck of the Arbiter, watching as his fleet moved into attack formation. The humans had ignored his ultimatum. Their small fleet now scattered throughout the system in what his tacticians called a suicidal defense posture. "They've positioned vessels behind the ringed gas giant," reported the sensor officer, attempting to use its radiation field to mask their signatures. Corva smiled coldly. "A child's hiding place. Target their orbital defenses around the third planet first. Once those are neutralized, we'll deal with their hidden ships." Captain Nexer studied the tactical display with growing unease. "Admiral, these energy readings from the gas giant's moons, they're unusual, not matching the rest of their technology profile." "Probably mining operations," Corva dismissed. "Begin the attack." The collective fleet surged forward, weapons charging, their target Earth's orbital defense platforms. The first shots flashed across space, collective energy weapons tearing through the outer layer of human defenses. "Their shields are primitive," the weapons officer reported, collapsing after minimal impact. Corva nodded, satisfied. "As expected, continue the advance." On the bridge of the human warship Defiant, hidden within Saturn's complex ring system, Commander Ramos watched the distant battle through enhanced sensors. "They took the bait," she said quietly. "They're fully committed to the Earth approach." Her second-in-command checked the weapon readouts. "All ships report ready, Commander. The modified shield generators are online. Power signatures masked." Ramos took a deep breath. "Signal the fleet. Execute Phase 2. Throughout Saturn's system, hidden human vessels powered up their engines, modified based on the data from the Intrepid encounter. From Titan, Enceladus, Memes, and a dozen other moons, ships emerged, not the 18 vessels the collective had detected, but 47. Many were converted civilian craft with hastily mounted weapons, but ships nonetheless. On the Arbiter, alarms suddenly blared. "Admiral," the sensor officer shouted, multiple contacts emerging from the gas giant's moons. Corva spun toward the display. "Impossible. Our scans showed. They've modified their energy signatures," Nexer realized. "Made them invisible to our standard scanning protocols." The hidden human fleet accelerated toward the collective's exposed flank. Their formation was unlike anything in collective tactical doctrine. Not a wedge or sphere, but a seemingly chaotic swarm that made targeting individual vessels nearly impossible. "Clever," Nexer murmured. Their apparent disorganization was purposeful misdirection. Meanwhile, on Europa, Sarah's persistence finally paid off. A hesitant response came through her modified translator. "This is Scientist Vela of the Collective. I believe there has been a terrible misunderstanding between our peoples." Sarah's eyes widened in excitement. "I am Dr. Sarah Takahashi of Earth. We agree. We must stop this conflict before it escalates further." As they spoke, The first shots from Commander Ramos's fleet struck the collective's rear guard. The battle had begun in earnest, but a small spark of hope flickered in the Jupiter system. Two scientists, human and alien, tentatively beginning the conversation that should have happened from the start. The collective fleet reeled under the unexpected assault. Ships designed for coordinated battle against conventional enemies found themselves struggling against the human tactics. The Defiant led the attack, flanked by converted mining vessels and cargo ships fitted with makeshift weapons. "They're not following any known attack pattern," Captain Nexer reported, watching the human ships move in their unpredictable dance. "Their vessels are inferior," Corva insisted, even as another collective ship reported critical damage. "How are they penetrating our barriers?" "They've adapted their weapons to operate on frequencies our barriers aren't configured for," a tactical officer explained. "They're exploiting gaps in our defensive systems we didn't know existed." On the Defiant, Commander Ramos directed the battle with calm precision. "Maintain the swarm pattern. Target their sensor arrays and communication nodes first, then weapons systems. Remember, we don't need to destroy them, just disrupt their coordination." The human fleet moved like a school of fish, seemingly chaotic, but with underlying purpose, constantly shifting to prevent the collective ships from focusing their superior firepower. Back on Europa, the conversation between Sarah and Vela had progressed rapidly. Both scientists were now sharing their translation algorithms, working to build a bridge between their languages. The phrase your Captain Vasquez used, "We come in peace," was translated to our language as, "We seek your submission," Vela explained, and what our Captain Nexer intended as a request for identification was rendered to you as a threat. "Classic tragedy of errors," Sarah said grimly. "But we need to stop this battle before more lives are lost. Can you contact your leaders?" "Admiral Corva has locked down all communications," Vela replied. "But there may be another way." In the heart of the battle, the Arbiter shuddered as multiple human weapons found their mark. "Our fleet cohesion is breaking down," Nexer reported. "They're targeting our communication relays specifically, isolating our ships from each other." Corva's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Fall back and regroup. We need tow." "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a transmission on all frequencies. Origin point is Europa. It's being broadcast in both languages simultaneously." "Put it through," Corva ordered. The main screen split, showing Sarah and Vela side by side. "This is Dr. Sarah Takahashi of Earth and Scientist Vela of the Collective." They began in unison. "We have discovered a critical error in the translation matrix that led to the first contact incident. What Captain Vasquez intended as a peaceful greeting was translated as a threat. What Captain Nexer meant as a request for identification was interpreted as hostility." Corvus stared at the screen in disbelief. "We have constructed a functional translation bridge," Sarah continued. "Admiral Chen is prepared to order a ceasefire immediately if the Collective will reciprocate." On the Defiant, Commander Ramos received the same transmission. "Hold fire," she ordered her fleet. "Stand by for further instructions." For several tense moments, silence reigned across the battlefield. Then Admiral Chen's voice came through on all channels. "This is Earth Command. All human vessels, ceasefire immediately." Corva looked at Nexer, who nodded solemnly. "All collective vessels," the Admiral finally ordered, "stand down and power down weapon systems." 1 month later, the Grand Chamber of the Collective Council hosted an unprecedented event, the signing of the Earth Collective Cooperation Treaty. Admiral Chen stood beside High Counselor Mira, both leaders flanked by their respective delegations. "Today marks not just the end of a conflict," Mira addressed the gathered representatives, "but the beginning of something far more valuable. Our misunderstanding could have led to protracted war. Instead, it has forged an opportunity for mutual growth." The treaty established clear communication protocols, technology exchange programs, and non-aggression pacts. Most importantly, it created a joint scientific initiative led by Sarah Takahashi and Vela, now friends despite their vastly different biologies. Admiral Chen spoke next. Humanity has always looked to the stars with wonder and hope. Today, we take our first steps into a larger community. We bring with us our determination, our creativity, and our unique perspective. Corva, who had initially opposed the peace process, had grown to respect the humans' unconventional thinking. Their military tactics were unlike anything in our 1,000-year history, he admitted to Nexer. They turned their technological disadvantage into an asset. Imagine what we might learn from each other now. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah and Vela stood at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. You know, Sarah said, in human history, some of our strongest alliances were forged between former enemies. Vela's skin rippled with amusement. In collected philosophy, there is a saying, understanding born of conflict runs deepest of all. Beyond the window, ships of both species moved in coordinated patterns, no longer in battle formation, but in a dance of cooperation that promised to reshape the galaxy.